What's going on, everybody? Happy Monday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets, powered by FTN, right here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you. Thanks, as always, for taking the time to hang out. Hopefully, you are hanging out with us. I want to answer any questions that you have. I'd like to know which top player absolutely destroyed your fantasy football day yesterday. I'd love to know maybe a couple guys that you're dropping, a couple players you're frustrated about. We can talk about all of that stuff on this show. Tino running the show for us, as always, is going to join us in a little bit. We'll talk tonight's football game. It's Bears and the Steelers. The total's at 40. We have a 7-point favorite. Pittsburgh Steelers team at home against the Chicago Bears. It does look like Dave Montgomery is going to be activated and play in this football game. I got some props, some picks. There's only 3 games in the NHL here today, so we're going to talk about that as well. Some shot prop and some waiver wire stuff. It is week 5 of the fantasy hockey season, so I'll address that with you guys as well. And there's a handful of games in the NBA, so we'll also talk to Tino, see who he's feeling in the association. Already, people hanging out. Odds, Najee drops 30 today to win me the week. I don't know. I'd put that at like plus 280. I don't know. 30's a lot. Full point PPR league, possible. He's been getting a lot of usage. He's been getting a lot of work. These are the kind of things I'd like to know here. Man, if you thought week 8 was brutal, I mean, week 9, my goodness. I don't say. I love the NFL because of the parody and some of the wackiness that does happen. At the start of the season, we didn't really get any of that. It was easy. When I say easy, like, for example, Survivor. Survivor was easy. It was just nobody was knocked out of any of my Survivor weeks over the first couple weeks. It was just you just played this team and you played that team. Last week, I was knocked out in half of them with the Bengals against the Jets, and then I'm knocked out of all of them after this week too because we saw some big teams lay some eggs. The reason I really essentially brought up Tino originally, because he is going to join us, is what he called All In Football with Jake Seeley and myself today. You can watch it on Game Plus Network this evening. I believe it's on at 8 Eastern. A great lineup over at Game Plus Network. I'm thankful to be part of that lineup. But the Pat Mayo fantasy footballers, you got the Mayo experience, I do believe he calls it these days, the Mayo Media Network. I joined him this morning to talk some trade targets and buy lows. It was fun to walk through that with him too. We really went through, looked at the remaining schedules and then the playoff schedules as well. We'll do that on this show here tomorrow. But Tino called All In Football Therapy Monday. So yeah, let's all come in here together and we can talk about the sadness, or we can embrace it. And we can also look forward to week 10. We'll talk some quarterback streams. We'll hit the waiver wire. We'll talk some defensive streams. And I also just wanted to, I'll do it in the next segment. I wanted to just go through some of the top performers from the week. And it really will blow your mind, especially from the defense position. And as somebody who really needed a defensive stream, there were multiple ways I could have gone that I didn't think I would. Just no chance. We'll save it. But there's a lot of defenses that I'm like, there's no way. The Titans. I'm not playing the Titans. I'm not playing the Titans defense against the Rams. They're in the number 2 scoring defense in fantasy this week. No way I was ever considering them. The Browns were dropped in leagues. I was in on Joe Burrow and the Bengals. They're going to get it done here. Joe Burrow had 3 passing touchdowns in all of his games against Cleveland. I think he had 3 in 3 straight games, at least 2 in every game of the season. 0, nothing. Single digit fantasy point showing from him. Cleveland inside the top 5. They have a great defense. We know this, but they're missing a lot of pieces, and they were able to turn out a pretty big game. Tino joins right now and says he needs 27. Looks like we're all in on Najee props. I do have a Najee prop a little bit later on. It's his rushing attempt prop. It's at 19.5. I think he gets there here this evening. Guys, you need Najee. At least you have a running back that you know he's going to be, a big part of the offense. And it really has been the Najee offense all season. Deontay Johnson getting sprinkled in here and there. He's been productive when he's healthy. He gets a lot of targets and a lot of looks. But Najee Harris is one of those backs that you just know that he's going to get like 90% of the snaps, maybe 85% of the snaps, a good chunk of the carries, and catching balls out of the backfield, whether they're up or whether they're down in games. But yeah, let's go over just from a team standpoint right away before we get into some of the fantasy performers. So Dallas, what? That's why I'm out of Survivor. I thought the Cowboys, I could have picked the Colts on Thursday night. I thought Mike White. I was a little nervous, the Jets and the Colts, and they're coming off that win, and then Mike White leaves, and then the Colts blow them out. But nonetheless, I don't like to pick teams on Thursday nights. It's kind of one of my rules in terms of Survivor. Wish I did it because the Cowboys were never in that game yesterday against Denver. You got to give the Broncos credit. They lose their identity on defense and Von Miller. They trade him away. And then they just show up on defense. They made Dak look pretty silly. Again, the Cowboys were never in that football game. Dallas was able to do whatever they wanted on the ground. And that defense looked like last year's defense, just really leaky. In terms of just rush defense, we saw Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams both have really strong days. The biggest surprise to me is the Bills, right? I mean, they're 14.5-point favorites. They go into Jacksonville, dead last in, pass DVOA, just a brutal defense, haven't been playing good all year. And I don't know. I don't want to say that teams have figured out the Bills like I feel like teams have figured out the Chiefs, but this is 2 stinkers in a row now for Buffalo. And what I noticed in that game is that Jacksonville played a lot of cover 2. They played some deep safeties. They were really just giving short yardage dink and dunks if Josh Allen wanted them. They were giving that to the Bills. And Buffalo's going to have to establish a run game if I'm going to take them serious. Honestly, this is a team that's going to make the playoffs. They're going to need to establish a run game to make some noise in the playoffs. This is a couple years in a row now. A couple years ago when they played the Texans, they came from behind against Deshaun Watson. They didn't have a real run game in that game. It was Allen's first playoff game. Wanted to give him a pass. Last year, I thought that the Colts played better than them in the playoffs, and they sneaked a win out there. And then there was another game. I think it was against, I don't know if it was against the Chiefs or against the Ravens, but there was one game where they didn't run the football at all in the first half. They're going to have to establish the run. They have to. They can't be one-dimensional. And this is a copycat league. People are going to be looking at that tape and looking exactly what Jacksonville did. I mean, credit to the Jaguars. Like I said, they played deep. Each safety I thought played deep. They're given the underneath. They knew that they weren't going to try to run the football at all, which they really didn't. And the offensive line has some question marks. So full credit to the Jags, what they did yesterday on defense. But to me, that was the most surprising outcome of yesterday. To be 14.5-point underdogs at home and win the game and hold Buffalo to 6 points, pretty impressive stuff. And the big takeaway was the Josh Allen Bowl, right? I mean, that was pretty cool. I mean, Josh Allen of the Jags, 7th overall pick a couple years ago. Josh Allen, that we all know, of the Bills, 7th overall pick a couple years ago. Josh Allen of the Jags. By the way, I saw that he was mic'd up yesterday, so that's going to be some pretty fun audio to listen to this week when it is released. But he had a sack, the first ever, obviously. I mean, but they were talking about it on the Red Zone channel yesterday, just like the first ever same name sack a quarterback. But not only did he sack him, he picked him off, and he had a sack fumble, recovery. I don't know, actually know if he got credit for the sack, but he had a fumble recovery. It was pretty impressive. That's pretty cool. But Bills, I'm not overly concerned, but man, who have they played so far? They played a Chiefs team that I think we can all agree is not as good as what most people thought would be heading into the season. And they played some pretty mediocre teams. The schedule gets really tough for them moving forward, right? They got a game against the Bucs. I believe they got to go in Tampa and play the Bucs. They got 2 games against the Pats. Don't at me. The Pats may be the best team inside that division. They really may be the best team inside that division. They're pretty complete. But that was the big takeaway for me. Cincinnati laying the egg against Cleveland. The Saints, right? Not overly surprising to see the Falcons cover that 6-point spread, but the Saints couldn't really get anything done on offense. Some concerns that I have about Alvin Kamara we can get into on this show. Mark Ingram getting some carries out of the backfield and 5 targets and 5 grabs. He knows the offense, and clearly they like him. The Rams last night and Matthew Stafford. Everybody was talking a couple weeks ago when Carson Wentz made that pick inside the end zone. Remember when he just threw it up? Stafford did the exact same thing yesterday. And the Titans are sitting here atop the AFC, 7-2. They lost to the Jets earlier in the season, and they've rattled off 5 straight wins since, beating the Chiefs, beating the Bills, and beating the Rams. No real run game to think of or to, get excited about yesterday or moving forward. I think it's going to be a mess in Tennessee. AP got that goal line touch got a couple goal line touches when he converted for a touchdown. That's certainly valuable, but I thought Deontay Foreman looked pretty decent, the best back probably out of the backfield yesterday. And Jeremy McNichols still kind of hung on to his role, what he had before King Henry went down. So he was, involved in some second down, first down, but mostly third down work. And, some red zone packages as well. But here we are with Tennessee. This is what and then there's also more madness. Kansas City 13-7 against Green Bay. I'm not impressed with that. I'm not impressed with that performance at home. Mahomes again looked brutal. And then San Fran, just talk about an overrated team in the 49ers. They can't beat Arizona with no Kyler and no Hopkins, and also Chase Edmonds left early. And that's the big injury for the week, is Chase Edmonds is considered week to week. High sprained ankle, could land on IR, and James Conner has that big day. But here we are in the AFC. The Titans are 7-2. The Ravens are 6-2. The Chargers are 5-3. Buffalo's 5-3. You got the wild card, Las Vegas 5-4, Pittsburgh 4-3, New England 5-4, and all these teams are kind of hanging out. KC, Cleveland, Cincy, Denver, all 5-4. But the AFC is completely wide open from the number 1 to the 12 seed in the AFC, separated by 3 games. 3 games. And if the playoffs started today, we would have the Patriots and Ravens, the Steelers and the Chargers, the Raiders and the Bills, the Falcons and the Packers. The Falcons and the Packers, what? And then the Saints and the Bucks, the Rams and the Cowboys. How good would that be? The Rams and the Cowboys. And these would be your number 1 seeds. Arizona and Tennessee. Not gonna lie. Did not see that coming. I got more weirdness here for you. This is going to be a weird show, I think. Weird show. Tino's hanging by, but I want to talk more to you guys about the top performers of the week. Hit the waiver wire and look at some quarterback and defense streams to help you as well. So Mean Street's continuing here on Game Plus Network. Keep her locked. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Following along on the Twitter machine or watching on our YouTube page, you have a question, just leave it there in the YouTube section. I'll circle back as well if you have some sort of waiver wire question or anything regarding tonight's game. Tino's going to join us in the next segment, and we will preview tonight's football game. We have some props as well. I think it could be an ugly game. I would not be shocked if the Bears won, considering what we've seen over the past couple weeks in the NFL. Dustin Chexton says, 49ers burned him yesterday, but his bad for betting on them. Listen, man, I'm with you. I thought that Niners team, as much as I talk on this show about that team being completely overrated, Shanahan included, that no real business for them to lose that game. I didn't think, right? You're going up against Colt McCoy. There's no Kyler. There's no Hopkins. As I mentioned, Chase Edmonds leaves early, and here they are. I mean, it was no contest. They certainly crushed them. Had some garbage time stuff from like Kittle and Ayuk and things like that. And Jimmy Garoppolo, you look at the end of the day, and he finishes as a top 12 quarterback, but were you really impressed at any moment with Jimmy Garoppolo yesterday? When do they make that switch? They have the Rams this week, and then they have the Jags. I think we'll see Trey Lance after this week. You can't throw him in there against the Rams, especially what will be probably Von Miller's debut. So I don't think you want to do that. But we will hit the waiver wire. In fact, we can do it right now. There's really not a lot. So Chase Edmonds, high ankle sprain, could land on IR. James Conner, 10 rushing touchdowns, a big day yesterday, a couple touchdowns. Actually, I think he had 3. He caught 5 passes. You know, I'm going to view him as a top 12 running back as long as Chase Edmonds out. I'm going to view him as a guy that I saw a couple of years ago in Pittsburgh, getting a bulk of the carries, the goal line work, which is he already had that lined up anyways, and then catching balls into the backfield, which is something that he didn't do. Jake talked about selling high on him. Sure, I get it. If he's your third back, he's probably your third back. You know, you've been rolling him out as a flex, and you're probably in a good position come fantasy football playoff time. Could you flip him and get maybe Saquon in return? I don't know. That's something that I would do if you could get Saquon. Like, you ask me who would be the better play from week 15 to 17, Saquon or Connor. I would lean with Saquon. Now, there's certainly some risk. Get the Giants on a bye. They come out of the bye. I think they have the Bucks, so a tough matchup. But it's all about context. It's all about your schedule. You got to look ahead at your schedule to see, fill in those bye weeks right now, because a lot of these players, I mean, you're not going to be able to pick off running backs off the waiver wire, I don't think, and play come fantasy football playoff time unless significant injuries happen. But you need to have these guys handcuffed. The Tony Pollards of the world, Samaje Perine, Madison, these guys need to be rostered just in case, like the next man up sort of deal. Jake always talks about it on All in Football, which you can catch again, Game Plus and Bets TV. So Zach Moss leaves with an injury. Devin Singletary would be the guy, even though they don't run the football. We saw a bit of a sample size with him earlier in the year when there was no Moss and what that usage could look like. Maybe only like 8 or 9 carries, even if he's just the single back, but at least he's the single back there, catching some balls out of the backfield and getting some goal line work. Darrell Henderson left. He came back. Sony Michel's one of those next man up guys that I would have, stashed. But other than that, there's really just not a whole lot. And from the waiver wire standpoint, I got some guys here that are owned in fewer than 50% of leagues. Elijah Moore is the big one. He finishes the week as wide receiver 1. He should be rostered. Jets have a really nice schedule moving forward. He's got a matchup against the Bills this week. It's tough, but he could be okay for you moving forward. Brendan Ayuk against the Rams, tough, but that's 2 straight games now. He's been productive. Renfro is not owned in enough leagues. Got his catch prop at plus money yesterday, 5.5. He's got the Chiefs this week. Real nice spot for Hunter Renfro. He's the guy, in my opinion, moving forward in Las Vegas, him and Darren Waller. Bateman's not owned in enough leagues. Another decent game from him yesterday. Targets, some catches out of the, they used him kind of all over, I thought. There's an end around play with him as well. But Bateman should be rostered. How about Tim Patrick in deeper formats? I know it's a little crowded with the Broncos, but the Eagles, they just can't stop anybody. I mean, they can't stop tight ends. We'll get to that in a little bit. Quarterbacks have had their way with them. I think Teddy Bridgewater is a good streamer this week, but Tim Patrick, a strong showing from him. I think he's really good. Cortland Sutton now, by the way, 3 games with Jerry Jeudy, and in all 3 of those games, he's finished outside the top 60 at the wide receiver position. If I owned one Bronco, it would be Jerry Jeudy, and I'd be looking to sell. I know it's tough to sell Sutton, but I'd be looking to flip him. I think he's a good wide receiver. It's a run-first offense, and I like Jerry Jeudy the most out of those guys. And, Tim Patrick still has got a lot of value. Bryan Edwards did nothing at 4 targets and zero catches. I got respect for the Giants' corners. I think you can throw on them in the middle of the field, which is why Hunter Renfro, I think, had the day that he had. But also Edwards moving forward this week could be a decent spot against the Chiefs. And I always throw out Van Jefferson. Man, he dropped a deep ball. I don't know if he would have found the end zone, but that was a deep ball that he dropped. But what I noticed from Van Jefferson, and I keep talking about him on this show, and my apologies if he never pans out for you, is that he was right there in terms of snaps with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. They all played 50 plus. So that was his best performance in terms of just usage and running routes and being on the football field. I think he's going to continue to trend up in this offense, but there's really not a whole lot from the wide receiver position or the running back position. I suppose in deeper leagues, Jordan Howard, but how much more player are you going to get out of him? You got the Broncos, and then there's a bye, I believe, here pretty soon with the Eagles. The teams on bye this week: Chicago, Cincy, Houston, and the Giants. That's where I would look in terms of just like buying players, because I think you can pick on owners. One guy is Saquon. I don't think I'm touching any of the Giants wide receiver core, but maybe you can get in on Higgins. Joe Burrow does have a really tough schedule, but coming off a dud game, the bye week, maybe you can acquire him in a super flex league, but we'll talk buy lows and stuff. We'll dive into that deeper tomorrow. Quarterback streams: Carson Wentz against Jacksonville, Big Ben against Detroit, Matt Ryan at Dallas. I don't know what, Ryan and the Cowboys, do they bounce back? You got the revenge there, Dan Quinn, former squad. I don't know. I don't really buy into any of that. I think Matt Ryan could be okay in like a super flex league to stream him. I think Teddy Bridgewater may be a really decent stream against the Eagles. So the Eagles have allowed a 75 completion percentage to quarterbacks this year. If it finished that way, that would be an NFL record. 4 of the last 6 quarterbacks they have faced have had at least an 80% completion rate against them. Actually, sorry, 5 of the last 7. 5 of the last 7, my goodness. And the 2 quarterbacks that didn't have the 80% completion rate against them is Jared Goff, of course, and the other one was Sam Darnold, who, by the way, is headed for an MRI on his shoulder here today. Maybe it's just time for them to, it may be PJ Walker time, honestly. Like, it didn't work out. It was good to start the season. Matt Rule called him out yesterday, just tossing up passes, which you just can't float them. Josh Allen did that yesterday too. Instead of throwing away or take the sack, it just costs your team, right? It cost the Bills yesterday. It cost Carolina yesterday. But 5 of the last 7 quarterbacks that have played Philadelphia have had at least an 80% completion rate. So I know that Denver's a run-first team, but also maybe an opportunity to play Teddy Bridgewater, who had a pretty decent day. He shows up and has an okay fantasy day, and then you got Judy. You got some weapons through the air, so you can pass on Philly. So he is an interesting streamer. And then Baltimore, surprisingly, they're available on the wire. They got Miami, Denver against Philadelphia, Tennessee against the Saints, and then maybe Las Vegas against KC. I don't know. They have a pretty decent pass rush, and that offensive line of KC is not great. Mahomes, another dead game. We're at 19 minutes already. There are a couple things I really wanted to get into. Maybe I'll save it for Tino. I'll save it. We'll break, and I wanted to go over the top performers of the week with Tino, and then we'll also switch gears and we'll talk Monday Night Football. So keep the comments coming. Any questions that you guys have, hockey, NBA, doesn't matter. We'll address them here on the show. Love to know what you need here tonight, and also some guys that maybe you're thinking about dropping. We can touch on that as well. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on a Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney and Tino Rodriguez here, rocking the Brooklyn jersey. I dig it. How are you, sir? Nice. I like those jerseys.
We're doing all right. See, and I knew that was going to happen. We are live. We have a lot of audio stuff going on. I caught myself. I couldn't do it. I got too much going on behind the scenes here. You compliment the jersey, you threw me off. No, this is last year's City jersey, or this might be the Basquiat jersey, but shout out to the NBA because the City Edition jerseys that they've already dropped are really, really nice, actually, for a lot of the teams. I'm a big alternate jersey guy, Meaney. I don't know about you, but I don't like the cut and dry home and aways. Give me the alternates. Give me the give me the different colors, to a certain extent.
I'm all about that too. I agree. What do you think was the big takeaway? What was the most, there's a lot of just crazy randomness from week 9, but what do you think?
That it's any given Sunday. Seriously. I talked to you about this. A close buddy of mine was legging out a gigantic parlay and, 3 favorites in the Rams, the Cowboys, and the Bills, all -3, something more better, lose outright. And honestly, not really even close. The Broncos handled the Cowboys. The Titans handled the Rams. The Bills were close, but they didn't really do anything, right? 6-9 or 9-6, however you want to say it there. The NFL is the NFL. You talk about the Giants. The day of the dog. I guess that's the takeaway, right? The day of the dog, the Giants win. And here we are going into Monday night. I need the Bears. Can we get one more? Meaney, please?
Yeah, we may. Hold tight for tonight's game. I wanted to roll through some of the big performers from the week. So Lamar Jackson's your top quarterback. He has 3 touchdowns. He has 120 yards on 21 rushing attempts. He's QB1 for the week. Justin Herbert against the Eagles, we don't need to talk about that anymore, but he carved him up just like every other quarterback has. 356, 2 touchdowns, had a rushing touchdown as well. Matt Ryan. How about Josh Johnson as QB4, right? Okay. Teddy Bridgewater inside the top 10. Mentioned Jimmy Garoppolo inside the top 10, but he didn't look all that good. Baker Mayfield finishes inside the top 10 despite really not running a lot of plays. And I got some Baker stats here for you with Odell and without Odell. So with OBJ, he's 7-5, a 62% completion rate, averaging 213 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 8 picks, and a 93.9 passer rating. Without OBJ, he's 8-4. His completion percentage is up to 65. He's averaging 30 more passing yards. He has 14 touchdowns and 3 picks, and his QBR 100. So certainly some better numbers for Baker. How about your running backs, your top running backs for the week? James Conner up at the top, of course, 3 total touchdowns, 96 yards on the ground, caught 5 passes for 77 yards. If you have Conner, significant upgrade with this Chase Edmonds news. I would hang, but you could make him available to your waiver wire, to people in your league, just to see what you could get. Taylor, Chubb, Mixon, all inside the top 5. No real surprise there. Nyheim Hines has his best game. He had more fantasy points on Thursday than 5 previous games combined. Your boy Cordero Patterson, yet again, 6 grabs, 126 receiving yards for that guy yesterday. That sets up the big play to get them down the field to kick the game-winning field goal. Devontae Freeman, does seem like it's his backfield, even when Latavius comes back. I thought it looked okay. 13 carries for 79 yards, has a receiving touchdown. Devontae Booker's been strong here, but they're on bye, and Saquon's going to come back. And then Jordan Howard's in there as well. Here's where it got weird yesterday. Here's your top 12 wide receivers for the week. And I had tweeted this out earlier, and somebody just said, week 9 is not over yet. And I love the comment after. Damn. Better tell this guy who owns a business based on NFL stats. Yeah, week 9 is not over, but I don't know, man. Are there going to be any Chicago Bears that finish inside the top 12 here? I don't know. But here's your top 12 wide receivers so far for the week. Elijah Moore, number 1. Devontae Smith, I think we nailed that one. A great buy low candidate. Windows probably closed. He does have a couple tough matchups, Denver and the Saints, but the schedule is super soft down the stretch. Keenan Allen, you got Zacchaeus from Atlanta, and I always butcher that name, but he's inside the top 5. Marquise Brown is in there as well. Take a look at some of these other names for the week. Here we go. Where is it? All right, Malik Turner, Cordero Patterson, Brendan Ayuk. You got Tim Patrick. You got Justin Jefferson, Keenan Allen, Marquise Brown, who are all there. But man, a lot of these names, dude, these guys weren't played in DFS. They weren't owned in leagues. And it gets even crazier when you look at the top 10 tight ends. You got 3 Chargers on the board. 3 Chargers on the board. Steven Anderson, you got Donald Parham, and then Jared Cook. All 3 of these guys on the same team finishing as a top 10 tight ends for the week. We still have 2 that could finish inside the top 10 this week in Komet and Freiermuth. But man, what a bonkers week, dude.
Yeah, and it's like, if you look around your fantasy landscape, just go to your league, you're going to see some weird numbers out there, right? Some 70s, some 80s, some 90s. And this is kind of something we talked about before we came on the show. It was a weird week, not only in terms of the NFL, but fantasy, because all these guys who just no one has and rosters, you started in the Colts game. We have a lineman scoring a touchdown. That really trickles it all down. You really got Josh Johnson ends up as a top 3 quarterback. No one's going to even play him because he didn't even start the game, and it's you kind of tip the cap, right? You got to tip the cap to the NFL and just be like, you beat me this week. In most leagues, I mean, shout out to Jake Seeley and All in Football. He said, if you survived, man, good for you, right? Because it wasn't easy. I mean, defenses, You couldn't rely on defenses. Bills D, Rams D. I mean, the Cowboys D. I picked up the Cowboys D a few places. I mean, teams just let you down left and right. And so, you have the Browns with a pick 6, the Titans with a pick 6, and that Browns pick 6, by the way, awesome. 100-yard pick 6, huge fan of something like that. So, but it wasn't just players, it was plays, it's other than the Patriots, I think the Patriots were a big one. I picked them up a few places, but a lot of people let you down, right? I mean, I don't know any big guys who really showed out.
It was Donovan Peoples-Jones is on there as well. I kind of butchered the way that list went, but Moore, Smith, Zacchaeus, Turner, Malik Turner. There you go. Yeah. Tim Patrick, Cordero Patterson, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Donovan Peoples-Jones, actually 70-plus yards in 3 straight games for him. I think he's an interesting ad. And then the big names there with Jefferson, Allen, but even, Brendan Ayuk, right? And nobody was really expecting another strong game, and now he becomes a pickup. But you mentioned the defenses. So the Pats, number 1, which against Carolina, sure. I mean, I think you can roll out any defense against Carolina with confidence moving forward, even with CMC back in the swing. But Cleveland, 50% ownership. They're available. They come away with 18 fantasy points. Tennessee, 10% ownership. Number 3, nobody was playing them against the Rams. The Jags, number 4, 1% ownership. Nobody was playing them against the Bills. You got Miami in there. I get Miami, but ownership 54%. Houston right behind them at 1%. Your Giants 3%, and then Arizona. People weren't really playing Arizona with confidence, and then the Vikings against the Ravens 13%. So 8 of the top 10 defenses yesterday weren't owned. So it was a weird week, and we can't close the door on the week yet until we preview tonight's game. So we got our guy George made us some props here. This is kind of what I'm thinking. We'll walk through this together. You got some touchdown props. I don't know what you think overall for the game, but I got the under 40. I feel pretty decent about the under. I won't bet it personally, so I didn't want to put Chicago +7, but that's the way I'm leaning here with Chicago +7. I think that they cover. I think that they could hang around this game. I'm not really sold on Pittsburgh's offense overall, but these props, I mean, Najee is where I would start here. With just like the 19.5 carries. There's a couple of people, yourself included, hanging out here that need a big day from Najee. I would just look at some of the attempts, 23, 24, and 26 over his last couple of games. I got Komet in there. I was looking at the Bears receiving core, Tino, just to see which guy that I would roll out. Allen Robinson's 3.5 catches at plus money. Can't trust him. Darnell Mooney's been banged up all week. It looks like he's going to play and he's going to be fine, but his catch props at 3.5. I just took the guy at 2.5. Cole Komet at 2.5 catches here. It is juice to the over at -140, but I think if you can put it into a parlay, let's pair it up with a couple shot props that we can give you a little bit later on. At least 3 catches in 3 straight games, and he has 17 targets over the last 3. And then Justin Fields has gone over this number in 3 straight as well. And then for Harris, or Deontay Johnson rather, I was looking at his catches. He's plus money at 6.5. It's a little high for me, but this is a guy in Johnson who is just, that 70-yard mark is something that he's done pretty consistently so far this season. So I think a lot of the offense really does run through him and Najee. And for Harris, like I said, 5 straight games now, 70-plus receiving yards for him, 98 last week. And then the other guy that I have on there is Pat Freiermuth. There's no Ebron again here this week, and this is a guy who's definitely trended up. He has topped this number in back-to-back weeks. In fact, he has 14 targets and 11 grabs in his last 2 games. What do you make of those props? Do you have a favorite, one you're not feeling? Let's call some touchdowns. What do you think about tonight?
So I told you off air that I wrote down Najee Harris over rushing attempts before we even talked.
Nice, on the same page.
Good. Could be a good or bad thing. Could be a good or bad thing. I don't know when we're on the same page sometimes. So he hasn't hit under that total in over a month, so you got to feel pretty good about it. There's a few things that you touched on here that I want to address because you said it yourself. Which Bears guy is going to do anything at this point, right? And so I told you at one point in time that the Chicago Bears receiving core only has 4 total touchdowns this season. Not good. Not very good. 2 of those touchdowns coming to random tight ends, one being Jesse James, another I couldn't even tell you off the top of my head. Cole Komet has not scored yet, which is why his anytime score prop is where it is at 5-1 plus 500. But if the guy's going to get the target and the red zone work that he has been getting, plus 500, man, I know we're looking at an under total here, but there's got to be points scored somehow. So at plus 500 on a guy who's probably going to get 6 targets, I feel pretty good about it. And then if you really want to take a long shot on a receiver, because you said it, Darnell Mooney's kind of banged up. Allen Robinson's let us down. Who can we go to? Marquise Goodwin. Give me plus 650. Marquise Goodwin on a bomb. It's got to be a bomb. It won't, unless it's like a jet sweep. But I looked up and down this lineup. I'm like, who the heck could be the guy? Marquise Goodwin, a throwback name there. Plus 650. He has been getting involved in this offense as of late. I feel pretty good about that. Before we get this going, just 2 more things. Claypool over 4.5 receptions, plus 110. I just see him getting worked a lot in this game.
That's good.
And then Justin Fields, if they do run the ball and someone has to score, plus 275 for a guy that has been ticking upwards in terms of the rushing department for the Chicago Bears team. They just almost matched or passed their season high total in points with 22 last week. 24 is their highest, but 22 last week, large in part because of his legs. Plus 275 for him to score again is great. And over 7.5 rushing attempts. He's gone over this each of the last 2 games, fell 1 short the game before, but plus 110. I just see him running the ball a lot if they're trying to ease David Montgomery back in. But yeah, that's a lot to take in. but we got some value out there. There's some value floating out there.
I like what you're bringing to the table here. Yeah, I dig the Claypool one, the 4.5 catches. I like that one as well. I mean, why not take a shot on Goodwin? I mean, yeah, he's been that deep threat guy in the offense. He's a burner. They probably don't have much going on offense, right? No. They're probably not going to be able to move the ball. So maybe they could take a shot. Man, 4 receiving touchdowns this season? That is absolutely atrocious, man.
And 2 to receivers. Brutal. That's the thing. Two over to receivers. I was just looking at I was looking at their box score. It's not great. And you gotta think Komet's due, right? I mean, there hasn't been a guy more due. Jesse G, I bet him last week. I think that might be the thing for me. This might be a revenge narrative for me because he should have got the touchdown last week, catching with 6 targets on 3 receptions in a game that featured 55 points of offense, which is very uncharacteristic for the Bears. But James caught the touchdown. I think it's a matter of time. I think they really like Komet. I think they want to get him the ball. So I see that. Goodwin that's just an absolute. That's a Hail Mary.
Yeah,
but
it's a Hail Mary, and that's. Right, exactly. At 6.5 to 1, and it may take a Hail Mary, literally, for to get, hook up for a touchdown. But we do have some stuff there. We do seem to be on the same page. I think you start with Najee. I don't think you in on the under. I know it's a low number, but I don't think we see a lot of offense in this game.
Yeah, so teams go to Pittsburgh and the offense just stops for whatever reason. So I am leaning under. Yeah. I made the joke that I didn't even know what the total was, and it's not low enough. Like, these teams are going to want to run the ball. It's the reason we love the Najee prop, and like if Montgomery is back in the game, the Bears are going to run the ball a ton too. I mean, the clock's going to be ticking, so I think we can see some offense, but I think the drives are going to be sustained and super long. So, with that said, 40 is so low, right? I mean, that doesn't take a lot to get over, but with how these teams want to play, and they're not sugarcoating how they want to play, you got to think it's getting under, like a 20-13 kind of game or something like that.
Yeah, and obviously the one thing that would, screw us would be like any sort of pick six or any sort of turnover. Like, that stuff is obviously very possible. But the Steelers really at home, I mean, you're right. Teams that go there, not scoring a lot of points, right? I mean, they got blown out at home by the Bengals, but still that game went under. The game against Las Vegas, the game against Green Bay, there's been a lot of unders there. Last game against Cleveland went under as well. So the offense does seem to run through Najee, and Chicago wants to run the football as well. So a bit of a slow-paced game. All right, we'll take a quick break. We got about 3 more segments here, about 12 minutes left in the show. So we will talk a little NBA. Tino's going to stick around. We'll take a look at that NBA schedule. I got some shot props, and I'm going to hit the NHL waiver wire as well. Mean Street's continuing here on Game Plus Network. Keep her locked. All right, welcome back to Mean Streets here, and we're going to just turn the page away from the NFL here. Any questions? Again, we'll talk about it. Maybe we can address it towards the end of the show, or I'll circle back as always on our FTN YouTube page. So NBA, what stands out to you tonight, sir, in the association? What you got?
So we have been pretty good with this. It's been an up and down. It's been an ebb and flow. But shout out to us for betting everything on the board. Every sport, no sport is safe around us. So there are a few good matchups. Last time we were on, we had the Bulls against the 76ers. We had the Bulls against the Knicks as well. Long story short, the Bulls can't beat any team that's really good. They've beaten the Jazz, but I don't know. They're playing the Nets here at home is what I'm getting at. Now, obviously, I seem a little biased. This is a game where the Nets are, as of right now, plus 100. They are the underdogs. Nets have been clicking. I don't know. I'm kind of highlighting this game. Whenever the Nets are dogs, you want to go out and bet them. That's
I
bias
agree.
side. Whenever the Nets are dogs, you want to go out and bet them. But I could see the Bulls finally pulling one out. They are home, but it's going to be a must-see TV game again. And it's a marquee matchup. Here's where I'm looking at instead. I just wanted to touch on that because I think that's the game of the day. Knicks versus Sixers, another super good game. All these lines across the board, kind of pick them, kind of coin flips. -1 spread. The Knicks are kind of getting the lean here. I do like the Knicks to bounce back. Super weird team. They come back against the Bucks on the road. Then they lose at home to the Cavs. You kind of can't figure them out. The Sixers aren't very good. They've beaten up on the Bulls the last 2 games. I'm not sure how this one's going to go either, but I do like how the Knicks match up against the 76ers, especially because they have to feed through Joel Embiid. The Knicks got bigs. They play defense. I love the under in this game as well, but I do like the Knicks on the road, and we'll keep the trend with the road dogs going here. Actually, they're not dogs, but I like the Miami Heat against the Denver Nuggets here. The Nuggets still banged up. They are not the same without Jamal Murray. That's very apparent. Michael Porter Jr. was out. I'm not sure if he's going to play. Obviously, we're doing this super early, but they barely got past the Houston Rockets, who are not very good. They lost back-to-back road games against the Grizzlies before this, and the Heat, despite kind of getting blown out at home by the Boston Celtics, who seemed like they were out for blood there, have been doing really, really well. They beat a Utah Jazz team that, although they're without Donovan Mitchell, I believe they came back in that game. The Miami Heat are good at basketball is what I'm getting at. The line is also -1.5, super low, so you're getting good value on all these. I don't really recommend playing any spreads here. If you were doing any of these bets, just go straight money line here, because I do imagine most of them coming down to the final possession. Like I hinted at, Nuggets last game by 1, Heat last game by 3. It's going to be very close, so I'd probably stay away from any spreads. And so my big 3 is probably going to be the Heat, the Nets, the Knicks, but shout out to the Suns and the Hawks as well. The Hawks, all road teams, the Hawks have their work cut out for them against the Golden State Warriors. But when will the Warriors lose? I don't know. I just don't know. It's got to happen eventually. I don't know. That's not a best bet, but it's at 10 o'clock. So if I need to double down and make some money back, it might be a game I get in on, because I mean, the Warriors, I'm glad we got in on those futures where we did, Meaney. Let's just put it that way.
My
Especially
goodness.
with Steph and the Warriors. I'm loving it. It's just they're 8-1. You know, it's pretty impressive so far.
And they don't even have Clay yet, right? Like that's the thing. We talked a lot about the value in the Warriors when it comes to NBA championship with Steph MVP. I love the Miami call. That's the one that I have written down here at -120. Their defense is elite. Like the defense is off the charts, and I don't know if Denver, I'm not really digging their offense right now. So I think Miami, just like defensively alone, can kind of hold them in check. And then you can get Brooklyn again. Jump on ftnbets.com, use the free parlay calculator. You can get Brooklyn at +110. I agree with you. Anytime you can get the Nets, I think no matter who they're playing as dogs, I think you have to sprinkle a little bit. And then the Knicks you can get at -109. One thing here on the way.
Get in on this real quick. So shout out to Eric Brown here. He said, I believe Joel Embiid is out. As of 40 minutes ago, while we were on air here, it looks like there is a COVID case that just kind of came out, it seems, with the health and safety protocol as the news. And he's expected to miss several games. So Embiid to be out tonight, that could be huge. If you can still catch that line for the Knicks anywhere near that even money, you jump on it. I got this early this morning, so I feel really good about that. But see where it goes. If it stays anywhere under 6, anything under 4, I think the Knicks should win this game. The Sixers are nothing without Embiid, in my opinion.
Yeah. Shout out to Eric Brown. Thank you for that. We appreciate you hanging out with us. But yeah, Embiid is a good call. So before I came on here, I saw reports about Simmons to potentially the Boston Celtics with Jaylen Brown in potentially in the package. We'll see if that happens. It's a conversation for another day, but I wonder if the Celtics need to decide Tatum or Brown. I feel like I like them both, but I feel like I think they need to be separated for them to take that next step. I don't know. I think we could see a move, but we'll round out the show with a couple hockey picks. Got some hockey shot props and going to hit the waiver wire as well. So keep her locked. Mean Streets continues right here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. We're going to turn our attention over to the NHL. Eric Brown still hanging out with us. Says Knicks line up to -116 on FanDuel. Yeah, I'd go as high as what Tino was talking about, like maybe 5.5, 6 points. I do feel like Knicks in a pretty good spot here with no MB. Dustin also checks in, says, what are some of the things you look for when picking your shot props? So yeah, that's a pretty good question. We'll walk through it here as we bring up a couple that I have here for today. It's mostly, I take a look at volume shooters. I certainly look at the matchups, which teams are allowing the most shot attempts. I look at 5-on-5 first, like which teams are allowing the most shot attempts, high danger chances, where do the quality chances come from, and then also power plays. Like, let's bring up today on the board here for today's show. So all of these guys on first power play unit. They're all first power play unit. The trigger man really for the Leafs on that first power play is Austin Matthews, but Tavares is kind of in that bumper role in the slot. William Nylander on the other side. It's almost like the Jets when they roll through Connor on one side and Ehlers on the other side. Like the offense kind of goes through these trigger guys that play on the half boards. Mika Zibanejad on kind of like that bottom left circle. Him and Panarin kind of play pitch and catch, and he's a guy that gets a lot of his shots on the power play. But for Dustin Brown, his role is kind of like right in the middle of in the center ice, not so much in the bumper position, but right in front. So deflections, rebounds, and whatnot, and they run through the kind of like the side with Kopitar. And when Doughty's healthy, he's on that point, but it's been Matt Roy. But Dustin, really, I'm just looking at volume shooters, man. Shot attempts, a shout out to naturalstatric.com. Take a look at Natural Statric. Take a look at the leaders in terms of guys that are getting shot attempts, not just shots on goal, shot attempts, who are putting pucks towards the net. So Tavares and William Nylander are hitting pretty consistently. Now the odds are kind of changing. They're juiced to the over. And, some books don't even have these out yet, but these are guys that I gave to my guy George, 3 putts for par last night. So these are players that I'm going to be looking at here. Mika Zibanejad is juiced up to the over as well. I just don't know the status of the Florida Panthers here tonight with Alexander Barkov. I think, Florida at -111 is pretty interesting here tonight. The other two teams are juiced up. I'm not laying the juice -275 for the Leafs and Washington at -256. Not for me. But I think Florida at -111 in New York to take on the Rangers. That should be an entertaining game. Florida just crushed Carolina without Barkov or Sam Bennett. They're two number one and number 2 centers, and they crushed them the other day. The Panthers are absolutely legit. So I think anytime, it's kind of like the whole Nets thing what Tino was talking about. Anytime you can get these kind of odds, you just bet them. They've yet to lose in regulation. The loss is coming. I have a lot of respect for the Rangers, but nonetheless, I do like this Florida team. But I think you start with Tavares, depending on where you can get him. Matthews and Marner, these guys, just a little bit too much juice. So Tavares, William Nylander, if you wanted to go the opposite way. Dustin Brown is a guy that's been shooting. Alex Iafallo has been shooting as well. He's probably at ±. Mika Zibanejad, if you wanted to get away from Zibanejad, I think Aaron Ekblad in there. But Rasmus Asplund, we hit him twice last week over at FTN Bets. 1.5 shots was plus money the other day. It's probably not anymore, but more on him in a little bit. Let's break, and we'll talk a couple minutes on the way out about a couple waiver wire pickups. But Asplund is one of those guys that's been shooting, getting a lot of ice time, and getting some top power play time as well. So, Dustin, it is all about the shot volume, the opportunity, but I think you want to have guys who are on the power play as well. I think that's key when you get some of those shot props. So one more segment here. We'll hit the waiver wire. Mean Streets continues one more time here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here. One final time. Brendan hanging out with us. He says Florida didn't crush the Hurricanes. It was 5-2 empty net game. Dude, they crushed them, man. It was 4-0 in the first period. Florida was all over them. If you look at the 5-on-5 numbers, it was heavily in favor of the Panthers for the first 40 minutes of the game. And then the final period when they're playing kind of check down, dumping it in, Carolina. You know, if you looked at the high danger chances in the 5-on-5 shot attempts, Carolina had a really strong third, but it was 4-0 in the first period without Barkov and Bennett. This Panthers team is absolutely legit. This is what I'm thinking from a waiver wire standpoint. Tino, you can just roll through the graphics that you have. We got some week 5 waiver wire ads. It's like this kind of like your last chance to get these guys. Lucas Raymond has been very, very impressive so far as a rookie. His ownership is still like 60%. This is a second straight week talking about him. I think, you know, it's only a matter, he's probably not even available, but go and get him if you can. It's kind of the last sort of deal. I would roster him too in like 8-team leagues. Anthony Duclair had that 4-point game against Carolina without Barkov there. He's a streaky scorer. He's probably going to be added and picked up in most, you know, all year long, but he scored 20 goals in 2 seasons in his career. He's got some upside playing on that Panthers team. Duchesne's having a heck of a start. Troy Terry scored again yesterday. I believe he has a point in every single game so far this season. And then Brock Nelson had the 4-goal game, so people will be chasing him, but he's also a former 20-goal scorer. Tino, let's continue to roll whatever you got next here. We got some 4-game streams and some deeper league ads. So here's the 4-game streams. Alex Iafallo, they play today. You got Charlie Coyle. The Bruins play 4 games. Michael Bunting. Most of the Leafs offense comes from those top 2 lines, but the Leafs have a really good schedule. They play Monday, Wednesday, and Friday along with Saturday. So you have a little bit of those odd days that you can get some offense from. Mike Hoffman, not doing a whole lot, but he does lead the Canadians in goals. And then Rasmus Anderson on that top power play in Calgary. And then quickly on the way out, you had one more there that you kind of deep league ads. Cirelli, Getzlaff, Rasmus Asplund, again, Jaden Schwartz, and then Nicholas Roy in those deep formats. He's been scoring. He's playing on that first line in Vegas with Marchessault and Riley Smith. All right, Brennan, I love you, dude, for hanging out with us here and everybody else hanging out with us as well. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy the football game, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.